let's get into the mini disc a little bit. How about it? I've been showing this off a little bit. So this was the first iteration of the mini disc. I guess to show you the process, I'll get into this one a little more, I guess. I didn't do it with the PlayStation. But this one was really fun. I really appreciated the research process of this because it was just fun. I basically went to like Pinterest. There was a mini disc wiki, and YouTube were like the gold for this kind of stuff. And I just went on a hunt, and I was like, every mini disc I can find. Show me just every cool looking mini disc, every brand, just all the different varieties, all the different sides if I can find it, all the different casings for it and stuff, just mini disc. And then I took all this and I kind of sorted it out so that I can have like a top, a side, and just like references for like very specific key things, like this, like I said, a side angle. It like disassembled. I will say it was impossible to find like the Sony mini disc specifically disassembled and stuff. Like you're able to find like a TDK mini disc disassembled. And if you look at this mini disc versus the Sony one, I wonder if you can see here the difference. But like there's just ever so slight differences. But there's just some things that are ever so slightly different that you're like starting to model and you're like, wait a minute. Just the fact that this has this little divot here for a sticker, and I don't think this one does. And then this slot is it was really hard to figure out what the reference image is. That's why I mentioned that YouTube was good, because I found like maybe one YouTube video, you can see it here. We can literally see the YouTube like timeline. Where he pulled one apart, and I can literally kind of see him pull it apart and understand all the different components and stuff. It was difficult just figuring everything out. But yeah, pulled together some reference images here, brought them into Blender, and you can see here, I had the top, I had a bottom, I had some sides, and that was it. I went to town. I think I had a see-through version that I just looked at for reference because it was like higher contrast and stuff. So as I work, I like to basically kind of create copies so I can work non-destructively, because the second that I see that I'm going to start to do something to the mesh that I'm going to regret, or I look at it and I go, that's going to be a lot of undos, I make a copy. So you can see here, this was probably the first version, next version, next, start to get a lip going, then that, yeah. So I try to work that way just to like save myself some time, save myself some energy. But with this one, the process was pretty standard. I just attacked it. I made a plane, I pulled in the edges and I beveled them to create these kind of like rounded edges. So let me hide the CD and that. And then I brought it in, and then for the CD portion, I'm actually learning to use LoopTools a little bit. I can probably show that off a little bit here. But basically, my process was something like take the edges, bevel them. That's the bevel, right? Bam, get a couple edges in there, whatever. Then take this, and then I inset it a few times. Inset, there you go. Inset it a couple times, whatever. And then with this, I want to say, because if I were to loop tool this right now, basically what would happen is weird stuff, I think. But maybe not. Full influence. But I want to scale it. And I had this problem, where I had to rotate it. That was kind of what I did, I think. Kind of. You can see my thing is a little different. I think I may have brought in like another mesh and just joined these or something and connected them. Maybe. I don't know. But that's also that's probably the better way to do it, you know. That's loop tool all the way. Yeah, brought in that circle, brought in another circle, brought it up. This little modeling. And then really bad topology. Like, really bad topology. Like, if you're a YouTube modeling expert, don't make fun of me right now. You know, do not spend 20 minutes looking at my footage and analyzing it and telling people how bad it is, because it is. I'll tell them right now. You don't need to tell them. Don't do this kind of stuff. But do it, because it works sometimes, whatever. But, don't get used to doing this stuff, because it's not going to, it doesn't subdivide well, it doesn't work well. I got away with this because with this mesh, I tried to keep it at a high enough poly that I didn't have to subdivide it, or I did subdivide it, but only one level, basically. So a lot of the edges that were really bad, they didn't start to crumple and show. So I was lucky with that. Yeah, you can see here, I subdivide it, and it gets, you start to see it. You start to see it a little bit, but it's okay. It's okay. That's where I started. I made little glass hole thingies. These are just cylinders that you just bring up. The CD itself, I think, like I said, I tried to take the mesh that I had there and just use that as the basis, so I didn't have to resize anything or duplicate work. And then the lining specifically, you can see here, it's an SVG file that I basically went and I traced stuff in Illustrator, and I created some curves, and I brought the curves in. I wonder if I can show you. Yeah, I brought the curves in, and I basically just extruded them a little bit to get these kind of shapes. And then what you're working with here is just a merged or converted to mesh version of that curve. Worked really well for these kind of detailed parts, so I don't have to come in and actually model all these weird things going on here, and I can just boop, SVG done. Very handy. That first version probably looked like this, kinda, to give you an idea of it rendered and stuff. Looked pretty good already. I guess this is already starting to get I didn't make the label thingy, so we didn't get there yet, but we made it. I don't think there's any shading or materials. Yeah, there's no materials. Look at that. Wow. This is modeling here. So you can see here, this is one with, I finally finished a top cover and a bottom cover. You can see this. I will tell you right now, I modeled both of these things myself without being smart about it. Basically, something happened here. I think you can see it here. I just didn't line the squares up right. That was the problem. Yeah. So I modeled everything out, and then I was stupid, and I just literally I put the square on the wrong side, dude. So this would line up. If I were to stack them, and you see this is where the metal thingy goes, but that's how it goes. That's not how it actually works. So this mesh, I think I had to throw out basically, because there was no way of me moving this cutout from one side to another. No way. So this one got thrown out, and then we move on to version 3. And I'm sure this one I learned my lessons. Yeah, you can see, but you can also see it's like I said, they're not the same mesh. I was not smart about this. I don't know why I didn't use just the bottom part and just use it again. I think that was literally the problem. I used the bottom part, I flipped it, and when I flipped it, this square was baked into one side, so when you flipped it, there was no way of moving it. So I literally had to just model a top part that also had a cutout inserted. If I were to do this again, I would try to just use a Boolean modifier or something so that I could reduce the amount of work if I was working under a time crunch or something. But yeah, this worked fine. But you can see here that this lines up. I have a square here. I have the metal piece that would line up with that square, and then the bottom part also has that square as well. And you can see an exploded view here. And I think I even, in some of them, I had the clicker thingy in the wrong place. Man, reference images. That's all I'm going to say. Get the right reference images from the start and make sure it's working. Okay, check this out. You remember how in the start, I showed you, and I had reference images that were certain ones. Where are they? There you go. I went and I upgraded. So I had you saw in the beginning, it was the milkiest, potatoiest iPhone shots or something. I wish they had an iPhone. And then this is somebody with a DSLR camera in a studio capturing every bit of detail. I was able to zoom in here and see the grain of the metal. So it was so much better. I was able to really fix the model with this and get a lot better stuff done. So you can see all the different sides. I found better references, except for the sides. I'll be honest, that one You can still see some potato cam there. But we make it work. We make it work. This is starting to get closer to the final mesh, basically. I think like there was like maybe 1 or 2 iterations after this or something. This mesh is where I start to finally pull in for the sticker. So you can see a kind of like, yeah, you can kind of, you can see it. Like I'm trying to show it better with the wireframe, but you can just see it better here. There are these slight little indents for basically like stickers that were applied in production. And then there's a slight indent here for mechanical reasons or something. I don't know. I never owned a mini disc. I'll admit it right now. I've never touched one of these things. So I couldn't tell you half of the shit and what it is. This is also the textured version. So you can see here I have the glass shader applied. I have a metal shader applied. I have an albedo kind of like sticker-like texture applied on top of the glass refractive shader. If you've seen my PS1 memory card video that was glass, it's the same shader. Like, let me show it to you real quick. It's this like triple stack RGB refraction shader setup. And then I use unsplash random image of like scuffed up stuff to like give it a little bit of like just texture and make sure that it looks like it's been used a little bit. Even though I removed that in some of the renders because honestly, like I want it to look clean in some renders, you know? The metal clasp, this one, I went around a couple times on this one. This is like a really early rendition of this, which is not that bad actually. This is pretty fucking good for like metal, right? It doesn't get the exact like effect, but it's pretty fucking good. What I ended up doing for like the more final renders is I actually went into Bridge and used a Quixel like metal texture. And I just used that instead. And I found that to be like a little more accurate in some of the renders. Yeah, I was having an issue here where my UVs were like misscaled. And rather than actually taking the time to fix them, because UVs, right? I threw on the texture from the Quixel people and it covered up this mess. Didn't have to think about that. And didn't want to. The CD is probably one that's kind of interesting, but I won't talk about it too much because I basically just followed a YouTube tutorial and you can go follow that dude's tutorial probably. The CD is a very basic shader actually. I guess not. I basically mixed together 3 different shaders and the concept is the when you see a CD and it's refracting the light, or it's not refracting the light, when it's bending the light in that sort of way, or it's reflecting things in that kind of warped fashion. What's essentially happening is it's an effect called anisotropic. So with this like setup here, you can see I basically take that anisotropic property and I increase it or decrease it ever so slightly. I use the rotation to offset it. You can see here I'm actually having an effect now, and you can create some pretty cool effects with this. This is doing that same kind of refraction effect where it's telling it how to split the light and the colors in a certain way, and I have it set up to where it kind of like spreads the colors in like a pretty standard looking CD color that was gray. But now you can see as I tweak it, it gets like, this looks like those like Maxell TDK discs or something. You can play with that. And you can see here the rotation effects, like how it like rays out and stuff. Kind of simple. And then the back side, I just did a really simple rainbow shader. And this one again, I think I stole from some like random YouTube video or something maybe. But yeah, it just takes like a tangent and uses that as like the color basis, which was really nice. And also this part of the incoming part of the geometry, that you don't even really need it, but it helps a little bit. But simple rainbow effect. Great for Pride Month. I'm telling you. Pride shader right here. It's just bad modeling. I'll just say it. It's just a lot of like, probably like bad modeling. But it looks cool, right? Like you can get away with a lot of stuff. With a couple of good shaders and the cycles renderer. That's all you need. That's all you need.